Today on Sugar Spun Run, I'll be showing you how to make my favorite carrot cake. Hey Sugar Spun Bakers, Sam here, and today I am so excited to be sharing another carefully tested, well-researched, and perfected recipe. Today's recipe is one of my favorite cakes on the blog. It is super popular, especially around Easter. I have a really old video and it was due for a reshoot, so today I'm going to be making it for you again. Now to get started, we're going to go ahead and preheat our oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Next, you're going to need a large mixing bowl, and we're going to combine 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 cup of granulated sugar, and for a nice, moist, and richly flavored carrot cake, I also like to use a cup of brown sugar. Now you can use light or dark brown sugar, either works well. Just make sure you firmly pack it before adding it into your flour and the rest of your sugar. We'll also be adding 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda, a teaspoon of baking powder, and a teaspoon of salt. Now for spices, I like to use 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, and we're also going to add 1/2 teaspoon of ground nutmeg, which really helps give this cake an incredible flavor. It's just perfectly spiced. All right, now we'll whisk everything together until it's well combined, and since you have brown sugar in there, it's gonna try to clump up a little bit, so I like to kind of stab that to break it up. That way we don't have any big clumps of sugar in there. Now the next thing you're going to need is 1 cup of a neutral cooking oil. You can use either vegetable oil or today I'm using canola oil. And I'm also going to be adding a 1/2 cup of melted unsalted butter. I really love the flavor that the butter adds to this cake. Now today's recipe could be made by hand or you can make it in the stand mixer, but today I'm going to be using my electric hand mixer. We're just going to use this to stir everything together until it's well combined. Now, as you can see, this batter is pretty stiff, it's pretty thick, it's hard to get everything well combined at this point. That's okay, just keep working it until you don't have any dry spots or visible flour remaining. Next, we're going to need 4 large eggs, and preferably these would be at room temperature. Now we're going to add them one at a time, and I always break them in a separate bowl first before adding them into the bowl. That way if I get any eggshell in there, I can easily fish it out. And we're just going to stir these in until they're completely combined. Next, we'll be adding a tablespoon, yes, a full tablespoon of vanilla extract. I told you this is a really nice, flavorful cake, and using a tablespoon of vanilla just really helps set off the other flavors of the cake. So we want to make sure everything is nicely combined and that we have a nice, smooth batter. Now we can talk about our carrots. You're going to need 3 cups of grated carrots for today's recipe. Now, typically I will grate mine using a box cutter. You want them to be pretty fine, but I find the box grater doesn't always get them quite as fine as I like, so then I'll often just toss them in my food processor and pulse them for like 3 1-second pulses just to get them a little bit more fine. And you can see here exactly how that looks. You don't want to have any big chunks of carrot in your carrot cake. You want them to kind of melt into the batter, but you don't want to shred them so fine that you're working with carrot pulp. So we'll add this to our batter, and if you wanted to add raisins or chopped nuts at this point, you could add them as well. And I'm just going to stir this in until it's thoroughly combined. I'm going to be baking today's recipe in 2 8-inch cake pans. Now I've greased the sides already and a little bit of the bottom with a baking spray, and if you're using a spray, make sure it says baking spray. It should contain flour, that way the cake doesn't stick to it. If you don't have baking spray, you can grease and flour the pan instead. And then my secret weapon, anytime I'm making cakes and want to make sure they don't stick, you can see I have these parchment paper rounds. I just cut out rounds of parchment paper and I'm dropping them in the bottom of the pans. It'll make sure your cakes do not stick. Now we'll just divide this batter evenly into the 2 pans. Now we'll take these over to our 350 degree Fahrenheit preheated oven where they're going to need to bake for about 40 minutes. The best way to test that your cakes are finished baking is to do the toothpick test, which just means inserting a toothpick into the center of the cake, and when it comes out of the cake, it should come out clean or with a few moist crumbs. It should not come out with any wet batter. This one is looking pretty good, so this cake is finished baking. I'm going to let it cool for 10-15 minutes, and then I'll run a knife around the edge. You can see it's really not sticking to the sides, but I always like to just run the knife along it anyway for extra insurance. And then we'll carefully invert this cake onto a cooling rack. Remove the pan, and look, you can see no problems with sticking. I can just peel that parchment paper off of there. We're done with that. And we'll want to let this cake cool completely before we frost it. If If you try to ice it while it's warm, your frosting is going to melt all over the place. All right, well, since we're making a carrot cake, of course we need a really good cream cheese frosting to go with it. And fortunately, I have a really good cream cheese frosting recipe. While our cake is cooling, we can go ahead and mix that together by combining a half cup of softened unsalted butter with 8 ounces of brick style, this is not the spreadable, cream cheese, and the cream cheese should be softened as well. Now we'll use an electric mixer to cream everything together until it's nice and smooth. And for a nice flavor, we'll add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and 1/4 teaspoon of table salt. We'll stir these in as well. Now, if you use salted butter instead of unsalted butter, you can just leave out the salt. All right, finally, you'll need 4 cups of powdered sugar, and we will just gradually stir this into our butter and cream cheese mixture. And when you're finished, your frosting should be nice and smooth. Let's take a look at that. All right, once your cake has cooled completely, and make sure it is completely cooled, it shouldn't even be a little bit warm, we can go ahead and assemble it. I like to put a little icing on my cake platter to keep it from sliding around. We'll do a nice even layer of frosting between the layers. We'll go ahead and give this cake a nice layer of cream cheese frosting. All right, all that's left to do is we'll go ahead and cut ourselves a slice. And look at how moist this is. That is how you make the best, most flavorful, moist carrot cake with the best cream cheese frosting. I think you're going to love this one, and if you try it out, please leave me a comment and let me know what you think. I always love hearing from you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Oh man. That is a good cake.